Hello and welcome back. In today's video I will tell you how you can stop your inconsistency and finally get your KD up. Consistency is basically all you need in Rainbow Six, and in order to do that you need to get the basics down. Dropping 15 kills in your first game of the day and then going 1-8 straight after is a big issue for a lot of Siege players. Oftentimes you see people with really good mechanics have a really bad KD, and why is that? Because they are not consistent. So now, how do you fix that? It's really simple if you work on these 5 things. Starting off with the first point, you need to work on the way you're peeking. If it's an info peek or a Shaiko peek. Your peeks need to be precise, because if you make a mistake while you're info peeking a corner, you might give your opponent the chance to take your head off, and that's already it. You are now allowed to watch the round from the sidelines. So how do you practice your peeks? Really easy actually. Simply head into the shooting range or into an arcade and practice them just like I'm showing you right here. And don't forget, you don't have to be a Stompin or a Shaiko. A simple peek just like this one here is often already enough to get all the info that you wanted to get. And a little bonus tip is, if you're info peeking around the corner, don't instantly swing again, as most of the time you will just get pre-fired. Instead, if your initial peek was with a normal standing peek, crouch peek it this time, so that your head is on a different level and your enemies need to flick first, so that you have the time to secure the kill onto your enemy before they kill you. Now for the second and arguably one of the most important points, which is you need to stop switching your settings. I understand that you might want to copy Bolo or Jinxie's settings, as they are arguably the best or the most well-known players, but oftentimes it really won't work for you. Instead, find something you're comfortable on, and if it's a content creator or a pro player's settings, that's good for you. But please, once you have them, stick to them. You can't build consistency if you're always switching sensitivity, aspect ratio, or your FUV. If you're new to the game, nothing will feel perfect, even if you copy the best players in the world, because even they needed time to adjust and get comfortable with their own settings. And if you look at a player like Shaiko, who is considered to be one of the best players to ever touch the game, he's been playing with the same settings for over 8 years now. So please, stick to your settings and don't switch after one back in. And for the third point, you can't be a one-trick pony. You need to be able to play a lot of different operators, as every map requires you to play in a slightly different way. Some maps will require you to play a sledge or a bug to play vertical on top of the side, and on some maps you might need a Capitao or a Ying to clear certain areas of the map. If you always play one operator, you will very quickly realize that you can't counter your enemy's threats anymore. And yes, you might main Ashe, and yes, you might have made it to Plat, but from now on you're gonna see that your enemies will start to prepare side instead of roaming around the map. As from Plat onwards, your enemies genuinely start to understand the game and will make it harder for you to take area around the map. So instead of learning it the hard way, start experimenting with new operators, with new ways to tackle your enemy's defense, and you will very quickly realize just how much you've grown as a player, and because of that you will win so many more rounds. So start playing different operators and not lose your ability to play the game once your enemies have banned Ashe against you. And for the second last point of today's video, you need to make hero plays. Yes, you've heard me correctly, you need to make hero plays. You need to be able to take advantage of your enemies misdroning you or not holding their flanks properly, as you can't always sit on side. Sometimes you just need to leave your comfort zone and move away from playing your basic strats, where you sit on side and wait for your enemies to come to you, as oftentimes, if your enemies come to your bomb site, they have already played vertical and boxed you into a very small room. So instead of just sitting there and waiting for the enemies to shoot you into the face and win the round, walk up a staircase or jump up a hatches on Oryx. Sometimes even the stupidest plays are good plays. You'll be surprised on how often your enemies aren't holding their flanks or just forget to put a flank camp. So leave your comfort zone and get ready to make those plays who will win you those rounds. But don't get too overconfident and don't do the same thing twice against the same enemies. Feel free to experiment around, but don't forget, just don't become too predictable. With that, we're coming to the last point, which is listen to your sounds. Have you ever wondered why you get pre-fired so often? It's because your enemies listen to sounds very carefully. Sound cues will often give away players' positions. For example, like this one here. If you listen very careful, you could hear a different sound depending on what material you're walking on, or if I'm vaulting onto a bed or a shelf, or vaulting over a shield. These sounds are the ones that you need to learn and start benefiting of. And yes, siege sounds may often be very confusing to new players, especially because walls and floors are destroyable, and because of that, the sound comes through them, and therefore your enemies might not be where you expect them to be. And I get that these are hard to learn, but if you do not adapt, you will find yourself in a disadvantage, as your enemies will definitely realize that you're walking on wooden floor now, or you're vaulted up onto a table. I know that Siege is a very hard game to learn or come back into, but it is also very rewarding to those who are willing to learn and adapt to certain things. Sometimes it just comes down to playing the game a lot or watching a few tips and tricks videos. Anyways, if you enjoyed today's video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to my channel, as it would help me out massively, and it only takes a second to do so. Also be sure to write down